Your desire to change must be greater than your desire to stay the same. Unknown. Good day, everyone. Thanks to my patrons, today on Politics, I'll be responding to a video by Antonia Okafor that was recently shared with me by a user in the Xilver by name of Xilver, who is also here on YouTube. The link to his channel will be in the description. And this video was her recent publication of this year's July 15th entitled, How I Became a Racist, Sexist, Misogynist, in which Antonia discusses her slow coming about of her transition of far left feminist ideology to more right-wing conservative ideology. So then, let us begin.
I recently discovered something startling about myself. It turns out that I'm a racist, sexist, misogynist.
Ooh, you must have really gotten the regressive left's collective panties in a twist to earn those titles from them. Go on then, I'm quite interested to hear what you've done to get them frothing and triggered from the inside of the crowd.
This came as quite a shock to me. How did this happen? As a person of color, a single woman with a graduate degree, who grew up poor in a home without a father, I had a clear political path to follow, and I followed it.
I do suppose if your family was left-leaning and not too well informed of how illiberal the Democratic Party is, sure, that might seem like the logical course of action, to sort of follow in their ideological footsteps. But really, though, I would say that not even knowing the extent of your experience with college, that participating in university was likely the polarizing element that brought you into the fold, considering these environments repeatedly trend in doing just that to students.
His father was from Africa. Mine was too. What other reasons did I need?
Literally any other reason than identity politics would have done as a reason to vote for Obama. Superficial relatability does not determine one's affinity for a particular role, and neither should it determine your vote, especially in the case of a role that imparts such an immense degree of power upon an individual and their elected cabinet. Regardless of how you felt about Mitt Romney during the election, race should have had nothing to do with your vote.
I was inspired to see a black man rise to the highest office in the land. I believed his ascent would herald a new beginning, a new era of racial healing and harmony.
There is absolutely nothing that the impartiality of a presidential election, which is intended to be completely indiscriminate on the matter of race, producing a mixed race heritage result, would do to progress race relations. The election is built from the ground up to coordinate with the racial standards of the day. And since past the era of Jim Crow and other racially segregating laws, this possibility has been present legally and socially. Obama's reaching this position is only indicative of the active electorate's preference between politicians between the variety of traits and surrounding opinions.
We would finally have that frank discussion about race that everyone always talks about.
What frank discussion about race, might I ask? That's been going on for years in public debates, across the internet, and in private. The only places unadulterated conversation hasn't taken place on the subject are in the facets of media that are controlled by old guard corporations and corrupt governments, who'd make it their business to enforce the Overton window upon the larger society. And that sharing and mixing of ideas, extreme, moderate, and in between, will ultimately be the only avenue through which any sort of real social harmony could hope to be achieved.
I was also inspired by his wife. I was thrilled to see such a strong, opinionated black woman take the national stage.
But why would it matter to you if she were black, white, Asian, Caribbean, Hispanic, or any other race? If they're strong, opinionated, uncorrupt, and competent, what does it matter what race of the person who stands on that stage in front of the masses? It doesn't.
But then something happened. Actually, several somethings. I realized there was a big contradiction in my own life. I considered myself a free thinker, but I was thinking exactly what I was supposed to.
And that is the danger of the echo chamber. If any ideology forms a social and intellectual shell around you, then you are far from a free thinker. And simply because you flip on the positions you once held dear does not change that. You have to actively engage with opponents of opinion and those who take your position to its extremes, and freely take on criticism as well. These are just some of the components of the free-thinking mind.
I decided to start asking questions. I belonged to several campus feminist groups. I was even teaching feminism to inner-city girls.
And there's where you fucked it. The feminism part.
Part of that teaching involved making the case for abortion. These girls needed to know that they had the right to make decisions about their own bodies.
And this is true. The right to control what a woman is hosting in her body should well be within her legal ability.
Surely, I thought. That's empowerment. But one day I asked myself, isn't it men who benefit most from consequence-free sex? Doesn't that give them even more power over women?
Perhaps, if abortions were consequence-free. There are a great deal of costs that can come with abortion. To list a few: money, time, emotional toll, and strain on a relationship. Even the least caring about a bundle of cells might be disheartened, but glad at the knowledge that something that might have been is no longer. And then, beyond a couple producing an unwanted child to then be shoveled off to the adoption center or some pity-taking family member, to, hopefully, be raised at least in a household, but no less in one that didn't want them, rape can just as easily force a woman to bear a child. In either of these events, less gruesome or more, what then, Antonia?
And of course, abortion certainly doesn't empower the woman it prevents from ever being born.
The fact that the choice would ultimately be in the hands of the pregnant woman by its very nature means that this grants women more control over themselves, not men. And speaking of the empowerment of an unborn fetus, were to develop into a boy or a girl is absolutely absurd and inane. It's like talking about the characteristics of a fictional character as if they were real and basing your worldview on their predicaments.
When I began to ask my other feminist friends how they reconcile these issues, they just got angry. I was called anti-woman, even by progressive men. But I'm not anti-woman, I thought. I am a woman. I just don't want to be a weak one. I want to be strong, like Michelle.
And that is how you fucked it. You joined into a victim cult, where your social capital is earned through your position in the manifold of the intersectional oppression stack. Essentially, the less statistically advantaged you are, the higher you sit in the hierarchy, so long as you propagate the cult's gospel. There is no place for the strong in this cult, but the role of servitude. And personally, I wouldn't really aspire to be like Michelle if you're seeking idols of great strength. Not that I recommend you idolize something as fallible as a person anyhow. But if you must, there are so many more who have done far greater things for the world, and even African people, if you want to make it a race thing.
At about the same time, while I was a student at the University of Texas at Dallas, the UT Austin Department of African Diaspora Studies released a statement in which they said, and I quote, "African Americans are disproportionately affected by the saturation of our society by firearms. We demand that firearms be banned in all spaces occupied by Black people on our campus."
While the first part is very much true, the part where Black people are disproportionately affected by gun violence, in hell, I'll link a 2014 study by the New York Police Department in the description as an indicator of this. The second is stereotypical of Orwellian policies that campuses are more than happy to inflict upon their students, and it should certainly be pushed back against by those with egalitarian values.
Wait a second, I thought. Why would you want to ban firearms only in Black areas? Doesn't that mean that you either think Black people are more dangerous than other people, or less worthy of protection?
No, the reasoning behind this is as listed in the university's Declaration of Segregated Rights. Statistically, Black people face firearms violence more on the campus, apparently. Therefore, the ban is an attempt to ham-fistedly and poorly address this disproportion.
These questions did not endear me to my progressive friends. I was called a race traitor, even by white people. But I'm not anti-black. I am black. I just want to be safe. Like Barack.
Now, I just think this bit is pandering for the advertisement. Obama, were he not elected president, would be no more safe than the next person on the street, black or white, or any other race for that matter.
I realized I didn't have a good answer. I only had more questions.
And so long as you seek a group to provide you answer, this will perpetually be the case. If you want genuine, factual knowledge, you have to look for it yourself.
Like, why were blacks doing so poorly in cities that had been run by Democrats for decades?
Corruption and poor appropriation of local and federal funds.
Was it racism and sexism that was holding people back?
Hardly is it racism and sexism, and yes, it is much else.
Or was it something else? The more questions I asked, the less popular I became. But here's the funny thing. I started to feel better about myself.
And you well should. The active search for knowledge is an admirable cause, but you can't just stop at questions. You must dig to find answers from credible sources, if you cannot do the legwork yourself.
I decided that the very definition of empowerment required me to take responsibility for my own life.
Aye. Empowerment, in this sense, is by definition the ability of one to take advantage of their own agency.
I wasn't going to be anyone's victim, which meant I had to protect myself. So I bought a gun. I started to advocate for gun rights. That cost me more friends. I joined the pro-life movement and walked in the March for Life. More friends. Gone. Then I crossed the line. I voted Republican, the party that views me as an empowered individual, able to shape my own destiny, not as a member of a victim group.
And all of these things are well good and entirely your choice. But the Republican Party thinks nothing of you. The Republican Party, just like the Democratic Party, views you as a vote, asset, and little more. Don't make the mistake of believing these sold-out shells are anything above machines set in place to continue their bid for ultimate power. There is a plethora of proof about that fact.
And that's how I became a racist, sexist, misogynist. I'm Antonia Okafor for Prager University.
More than anything, I would say that this is instead how you became an example of the horseshoe theory. You, as shown in this video and others I've watched on your channel, and everyone who watches me, feel free to verify by doing the same, have not too much changed. Instead, it appear, and feel free to prove me wrong, Antonia, that you have maintained the exact same ideological framework, motivations, ideals, and even some of the same rhetoric as the intersectional crowd that you once stood with, but have flipped on the narrative. You still focus heavily on race as a primary characteristic of yourself and others. You still focus on this loosely defined state of empowerment. And you still focus on that tribalistic belonging to a group more than your individual growth of philosophy and action. In essence, Antonia, you're still on the same page, just the other face of it. But, hey, at least you're not a genuine, intersectionally inspired racist, sexist, and misogynist, like the affiliations that preceded your change. But if you really want to be that free-thinking version of yourself that you spoke of earlier, then you must truly break free of those shackles of the narrative others would push upon you as a matter of course. You must bring yourself from one that listens and believes to one that listens, questions, researches, and determines. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoy my content and want to really help me and my channel prosper, let YouTube and I know by giving the video a thumbs up, leave a comment, that one helps a lot, share the video with others, subscribe and hit the notification bell, join the Xilver on Discord through the invite link below, and hit up myminds.com and Twitter account. All of the aforementioned items that are outside of YouTube are linked in the description. If you'd like to help me make this channel my official business and profession, that I may take on the mediocrity of the world one video and word at a time and get rewarded for it, I would ask you to donate monthly to the channel by becoming my patron through patreon.com. You can do this by following the link in the description or through the I button in the upper right of the video. Or if you wish to donate only once, a PayPal tip jar is listed above the link to Patreon in the description. Godspeed and farewell, everyone. Till then, this has been Xilver with a Z.